T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4. We've gone for main engine start. We have...
From its first flight in 1981 till its final landing in 2011, the Space Shuttle was the backbone of the American space program. Built upon the experience gained from Apollo, and with the goal of making a reusable spacecraft, NASA accomplished a feat that most thought was impossible. 5 complete shuttle systems were built and completed 135 missions to low Earth orbit. They conducted science experiments, deployed and fixed the Hubble Space Telescope, and helped to build the International Space Station, which is in healthy operation still. Using Kerbal Space Program, we'll take a deep dive into each mission looking at the crew, payload, and mission objectives. Join us on this walk through history. And hey, you just might learn something. I'm Sears JT, and this is Project STS. Okay. STS-41-C, also Space Shuttle Challenger. As I talked about in 41B, 41C launched in 1984 through KSC, and it was the second launch of that fiscal year. So it launched on April 13th, 1984, roughly 2 p.m. UTC, which is about 7 a.m. Eastern, 2 months after 41B, so they didn't really have to do much to Challenger to get it ready for this mission. As you can see, they're in the payload bay, there's not a whole lot in there. So the turnaround time was pretty quick. Initially flew to a perigee of 138 miles with an apogee of 291, it's a pretty eccentric orbit. Standard 28.5 degree inclination. It is interesting to note that this mission was the first direct descent trajectory of the space shuttle, which I kind of do it with this craft. I only fired the OMSs once to circularize, but the actual space shuttle fired them twice to get to their full orbit. This one was actually the first direct descent, and it used the OMS once to get to that 288 or 291 mile orbit. This was the first mission to rendezvous with the satellite, so it was the first satellite repair mission. So it did have to go higher than that initial orbit to roughly about 300 miles to intercept the satellite. So I also mentioned last time that there was no STS-10 because it was canceled because of payload issues with the IUS. This one had an internal designation of STS-13, so it skips 12 because 41B was STS-11, quote unquote. Again, it was supposed to take a teeter satellites, but more IUS issues caused STS-12 to be canceled. So then this one became 41C and or STS-13, which is kind of funny because they brought up I don't know if it was a plaque or a piece of paper or something, or no, they created their own mission patches. That's what they were. They created their own mission patches saying 13 because the NASA administrator had a kind of a thing for the number 13. So other than that, one thing to note, since STS-12 was canceled, that crew was already assigned and everything, but we'll see them on the next mission on 41D.
T-minus 17, 16, 15, 13, 12, 11, 10. We are go for main engine start. 8, 7, 6. We have main engine start. 3, 2, 1. Solid motor ignition and liftoff. Liftoff of Challenger and the first flight to repair a satellite in space. We have cleared the tower.
I didn't get the roll program in that one. I don't think he even said there was a roll program. But roll complete. Pitching vehicle downrange. So commander, as you probably saw when I was putting the Kerbals in there, is Robert Crippen. We've seen him twice prior. So this is his third time commanding a space shuttle. Well, actually, second time commanding. He did pilot STS-1. And pilot is Francis Scobie, which he comes up a lot in future missions as well. And then 3 mission specialists being Terry Hart, James D.A. Van Hoften, which is a great name, and lastly is George Nelson. So Crippen, obviously I mentioned, pilot of STS-1, commander of STS-7. STS-1, he was his first time to space. Part of Group 7. Group 7 also had a lot of Space Shuttle astronauts in it. SRB SEP. SRB SEP complete. And the only quick thing about Crippen is that he was part of SMEET, or the Skylab Medical Experiment Altitude Test. So just kind of testing if Skylab would be viable. Francis Scobie, the pilot. This is his... Oh wait, I lied. We're not seeing Francis Scobie live. It's his first and only space flight. I think I'm getting confused with somebody else. He was part of Group 8, which, again, we've heard a lot of Group 8. He's an Air Force research pilot. He also has thousands of flight hours. A lot of bigger jet flight hours. So 747, C5 Galaxies. What else? He did fly the X-24s, the F-111s. Oh, okay. So no, never mind. When I said we hear him again, we will. He was assigned commander of 51L. That's why. It's like I know we hear about him again. That is why. So on to the mission specialists. The first being Terry Hart. He's an Air Force pilot, as most of them are. Mechanical engineer. His first and only space flight on this mission. Also part of Group 8. But he was on a lot of the support crews for 1, 2, 3, and 7. So he's been around, but this is his only time up to space. Scroll down here. James D.A. Van Hoften, other than having a fantastic name, he was a Navy officer and pilot. This would be his first space flight. He'd also go fly on 51I. What else? He studied civil engineering, taught fluid mechanics, wrote a lot of papers on turbulence, waveforms, and cardiovascular flows through the body. And through development in the space shuttle, he worked a lot on guidance, re-entry, navigation and flight controls, and he was a big part of the astronaut support team. And last but not least, George Nelson. I didn't actually find a whole lot on George Nelson. He wasn't a military guy, at least I don't think so. I couldn't find anything on him that said he was. But he was an astronomical researcher at a bunch of observatories around the country. He was also selected as Part 8, which I assume meant that he was picked as a science astronaut, but again, I couldn't find a whole lot of confirming nor denying that fact. So, he was on the support crew for 3 and 4, and he would go and fly on 2 more missions after this one. Alright, Challenger, you are go for ET-SEP. Did I get that last one? Yeah, I did. Okay. Perfect. Roger, go for ET-SEP. Miss activation. ET-SEP. I like using the RCS to kind of pull away from the ET. A lot of times it doesn't like to get away from the shuttle. So now that we're up here, I talked about the crew. And again, no info on the support crew for this mission. Lights on. Payload bay opened up. Mission had two primary objectives: to deploy this thing in here, and to capture that Solar Max satellite and bring it in here, repair it, and release it. Now this first thing, what they called the LDEF, the Long Duration Exposure Facility. It was meant, there's like tons of experiments on the outside. They're mostly pretty small experiments meant for, you guessed it, long exposure. That was passive, so it didn't have any antennas or anything. It wasn't sending data back, but some of the experiments did record data on tape drives and stuff. Hence the deploy it, go up and get it later, and bring it back down. It was supposed to be brought back 11 months after this mission, but due to 51L and then further payload delays and stuff of other missions, it got pushed, and it took over 5 years to get a mission up there to get the thing back down. So we'll be doing that mission at some point to go and retrieve this LDEF back from orbit. Other than that, it was also meant to gather a lot of information that ultimately would help be the precursor to Space Station Freedom and or the ISS. It was called Space Station Freedom at the time. There was a lot of like material sciences, material sciences to test radiation and extreme temperature changes. So they would know what materials they could build the ISS out of that would actually be able to last as long as it does today. Oh, and also wanted to test collisions with space matter. So, all important things if you're building a space station to know. Is there anything else on the LDEF? No, other than it was deployed using the RMS. So, go ahead and do that now. Alright, we have capture of the LDEF. Wish you could click on these while you're in here. There's some really cool pictures of this thing. IRL pictures of it being out on the RMS. Oh, you even got the moon there. That's cool. Alright, we are go for LDEF deploy. Deploying the LDEF in 3, 2, 1. LDEF deployed. Pulling away from LDEF. So cool. I'm really glad they implemented that you can watch stuff from back here. Alright. Half the mission done. Next step is to rendezvous up with the Solar Max satellite. Solar Max, I guess it's already named appropriately. I need to make sure I end that. Set that as our target. So let me get the transfer burn dialed in. I need to stow the RMS when you go up to it and rendezvous. And then I'll talk about what this satellite even is. So yeah, the first day of the mission was deploying that LDEF. The second day, they boosted their orbit to rendezvous with the Solar Max satellite in order to repair a lot of its electronics. It was operating since 1980, as it was launched atop of Delta II. Thank you, Thomas. So yeah, it was operating for 4-ish years. It was designed to study solar phenomena, so like solar flares, solar winds, that kind of stuff. Obviously, due to the name. Other than that, after the first 6 months, it started having some weird electronics failures and stuff like that, until they actually lost full communication and full control over it. Well, not full control, but some of the thrusters started seizing up, stuff like that. So if they didn't go up there and repair it, it was eventually going to deorbit and burn up in the atmosphere. So I saw this as a good opportunity to test the shuttle's satellite repair capabilities. And once we get up to the satellite, I'll talk about kind of the whole episode it took to grapple the satellite and get it inside the payload bay to work on it. And ignition at 1.1 kilometers. I'll take it. Okay. Match velocities with target at closest approach. Create node. So once we do this burn and we get within striking distance of this satellite, I will discuss how they initially planned to grab it and how then they decided to grab it in the end. And the Solar Max satellite's coming in behind us. It is now underneath us, 1.3 kilometers out. Performing speed match. Now. Man, the TWR and these OMSs. This looks cool. I'm also going to have to do some station keeping since it's getting a little bit further away. Okay, right here we are on our way in the Solar Max. I just have to do some station keeping. So like I mentioned before, they need to grab it and put it in the payload bay. The initial plan was to put, I didn't write down who it was, but they put an astronaut in the MMU and sent them out to try and grab it. Which they had this special device that was supposed to grapple onto the satellite that would attach it to the MMU, and then the astronaut would guide it into the payload bay. They tried that, but they found that the thing that was trying to grapple, there was something in the way. There was what'd they call it? The attempts failed because the grappler couldn't lock onto it because a grommet was on the satellite blocking it that wasn't in the blueprints. So he had tried multiple times trying to get on there, couldn't do it. So he tried to improvise a couple times, that backfired. But during these improvisations, they introduced some tumbling into the satellite, which when you're trying to grab something isn't the best idea. Because that makes it 10 times harder, especially when it doesn't have thrusters on its own to control it. So the astronaut then tried to use his hands. Again, just no avail. To try to null out the rotation, but only made it worse. So, and on top of that, it eventually rolled out of sight of the sun, so it started using its internal batteries. So if those ran out while they were trying to grab it, it would have been a no-go completely. But lo and behold, ground control was able to establish communication with it, used the thrusters that did work to null out the tumbling, and then they ended up just grabbing with the RMS because they're like, screw it, we'll just use the RMS. Which, I don't know why they didn't just use that in the first place, because it did have an RMS grappling mechanism on it already, but they wanted to use the MMU. He wanted to be a hero. So I'm not going to do the MMU piece because it'd just be me flying a Kerbal around the satellite with an MMU, which I guess actually that may not be a bad idea. I can make sure my MMU alterations are sound. So I could time warp a little bit to be more stable. Looking good so far. That's actually a really good orientation. Really good. We're gonna drive-by docking. Is that's probably phrasing. Capture. I thought there'd be a little more. Ooh. A little shaky, a little shaky. Wipe the sweat off there. Okay. Snackless, you said I couldn't do it. It just took me almost an hour, or whatever it was. Could be better, not bad. It's docked. Alright. Well, that was a pain and a half to get that docked, but did it. So yeah, they went out and repaired it. Like, go ahead and send them out. Go ahead and chill. Take some pictures out by the satellite. Yeah, so these guys, I'm not going to use the MMUs. These guys can snap off the solar panels, so I'm going to be careful not to do that. So like I said before, they replaced a bunch of electronics. Fixed, I think, one of the thrusters. They replaced the entire attitude control system. And it prolonged the satellite's life by another 5 years. So, according to the customer, it was well worth it. Ooh! Sorry. Van Hoften. Alright, I think we're almost go for Solar Max deploy. I actually don't know if they deployed it using the RMS or if they... I doubt that they just undocked it and thrustered away from it, but maybe they did. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Deploy. Solar Max satellite has been deployed. Well, spinning just a little bit. Turn STS back on. There we go. Cool. And that's how satellites are repaired. Let's bring this back home. The other thing I want to mention is they actually brought bees up in the mid-deck on this mission. Because they obviously wanted to see how bees would behave and if they could make honey. And found out they can. They can make honey in microgravity. Just kind of cool. Alright, let's go. Bring her home. We're a little heavy on fuel still, but that little amount of fuel is not going to make that much. Okay, here we go. Send the brand new Long March 7A rocket. But where's it launching from? They don't care about it. And we might have to go island runway with it. You're down. I forgot, you don't have much runway here, do you? Contact. A little bit of bounce. And full stop. Runway. Whew, okay. And that's STS-41-C. It did land at Edwards at runway 17. And this and the last mission we just did, no delays, no issues on landing. And they're both pretty standard missions. Like, pretty standard that they went according to plan, launched on time, landed on time. Other than the spaz in 41B, but everything went well. STS-41-C. Welcome home.